Good evening. Can you hear me well? Welcome to the International Sanctuary of Unity of Sacramento. I'm Reverend Kevin Cottrell Ross, the Senior Minister and Spiritual Director here at this church. My friends call me Rev Kev, and so can you. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this Faith and Future Ask the Candidate Presidential Town Hall event. These Ask the Candidate Presidential Town Hall events are not campaign rallies nor endorsement of candidates. Our intention with these events is to acknowledge the role and influence that religion and faith communities can have on public life and to provide an atmosphere where people of faith and goodwill have an opportunity to directly engage with individuals who have an interest in leading the nation through their elected office, including those with aspirations for the highest office of the land. Furthermore, at this church, our mission is to inspire people to awaken to their divine potential and to be a force for good in the world. As such, we see the act of voting as a sacred duty. Everybody say sacred duty. And so these forums are also intended to increase voter participation by centering the voice and values of voters in the national discourse. And parenthetically, our church is a voting center. So when you need to drop your ballot off, you can come here. The views expressed by any candidate or guest who speaks tonight, that includes you, that includes me, is solely our own and does not represent the views of the church necessarily. Got it? So that part's set. No matter where you're joining us from, we consider you a neighbor, including those joining us on live stream. Let's give our live streamers some love and appreciation, those that are here. Our intention here is to create a space of belonging where every face can be seen and all voices can be heard. And so in this town hall event, we invite you to operate with the spirit of neighborliness, yes? So I'm gonna ask you to look at your neighbor nearby and just say, let's just be neighborly tonight. Go ahead and tell somebody, let's just be. As this is a house of worship, if we find that the discourse falls beneath the level of neighborly and respectful, we will preserve the values of mutual respect and the sanctity of this sacred space by inviting people who cannot observe a spirit of respectful exchange and dialogue to leave. Which we don't want to do, but we know that we want to maintain a certain level. Yeah? That out of the way, we invite you to be fully present. Bring your full selves here. Tonight, we'll have an opportunity to ask our guests some questions, and I'll get to moderate those opportunities. You were given slips of paper. If you'd like to jot them down, we will be able to collect those slips from you, or you can come to the microphone that's standing right there and stand and give your question. If you come to the microphone, you're going to be recorded, okay? You will be seen. So just know that that is part of tonight's process. Cool? All right. We are very excited to have in our midst a homeboy from Sacramento who is no stranger to this community or to any of us, but who has chosen to use his life's work to enter the race as a Green Party candidate. Watch this quick video that will help you to get familiar with our guests.
In these bleak times, I have decided to run for truth and justice, which takes the form of running for President of the United States as a candidate for the People's Party. I enter in the quest for truth. I enter in the quest for justice. And the presidency is just one vehicle to pursue that truth and justice, what I've been trying to do all of my life.
Let's give a warm welcome to...
I care about you. I care about the quality of your life. I care about whether you have access to a job with a living wage, decent housing, women having control over their bodies, health care for all, de-escalating the destruction of the planet, the destruction of American democracy. Democracy creates disruption. It creates an eruption. It creates an interruption. Wide from below, the energies of everyday people is manifest. And I know there are precious people in your life who you care for. That's why it's important for you to be involved, important for you to participate. We're not talking about hating anybody. We're talking about loving. We're talking about affirming. We're talking about empowering those who have been pushed to the margins, because neither political party wants to tell the truth about Wall Street, about Ukraine, about the Pentagon, about big tech. Neo-fascists like Brother Trump or milquetoast neoliberals like Brother Biden. Wow, well, I'm so happy to make a world-shaking decision. You know what I mean? Well, I know gangsters when I see them. And gangster's not a subjective expression, it's an objective condition. Do we have what it takes? We shall see. But some of us are going to go down fighting, go down swinging with style and a smile, accenting the best in you and trying to tease out the best in me. Let's do it together.
Let's welcome to Unity of Sacramento our dear brother, scholar, philosopher, author, and now presidential candidate, Dr. Cornel West.
You know I salute you though, brother.
Come on in, come on in.
What a blessing to be here.
All right, let's make sure they can look at it, look at it, look at it, look at it. Tease it already. All right, we're going to jump right in, okay? But welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Well, I'm just so blessed. I'm honored. It's a privilege to be here. I do want to salute you, though, brother. You've got a magnificent and prophetic ministry here. I could tell by the space. It's just so consecrated. There's a sweet spirit in here. Let us give it up for this visionary leader, Reverend Kevin Kittrell Ross. And just Anita. There she is. There she is. It's Anita Ross's beloved wife. You know, my beloved wife, Anahita, is here. I got my blood sister here, too, with
Welcome,
Cynthia
family.
and her wonderful husband, Herthel, my blood sister, Cheryl, with our dear brother, Brian. And I salute each and every one of you. And last but not least, the band. John Coltrane was in the house, sounding good in spirit. Because the music is not ornamental or decorative. It is constitutive of who we are. And that's very important, because so much of this campaign is about the legacy of John Coltrane's and Martin Luther King Jr.'s and Fannie Lou Hamer's and Rabbi Heschel's and Dorothy Day's.
All right.
And those are just not citizens and activists. Mm-hmm. They represent the best of America.
All right. Let's dive in.
Oh, indeed, indeed, indeed.
So we're going to have questions from myself, questions from you, and we have some folks who have sent us videos that we'll bring up on the screen, and they'll ask you questions. So we got some water here for you, just in case you get thirsty on the way, because we're going to be asking some questions. Let's start with this first one. Is American democracy in crisis? If so, can you describe how American democracy is in crisis and how your candidacy would be intervening in this crisis?
Well, that's a profound question. American democracy has been in deep crisis for a long time, but it's just not the democracy. It's the American empire. We got 800 military units around the world. You got military troops in over 100 countries. That's not just a democracy. That's an empire. There's been 70 empires since the beginning of the species, beginning in Africa. The United States is the 68th empire. And we ask our precious indigenous brothers and sisters their history, their land, and how the empire began. We asked folk like myself, descendants of dignified Africans enslaved, 244 years. So that the best of America and the worst of America have to be highlighted. But we can't begin with just democracy. That's one of the narrow perspectives. Because people think, well, we have some deficits here or there, and then we're on the road or down the yellow brick road. No, no, no. American democracy is inside of the empire. You see, inside of the empire. And what is an empire? It attempts to reshape the whole world in its image and in its interests. With elites at the top, most of the citizenry paycheck to paycheck, struggling. That's 63% now, fellow citizens. 3 individuals at the top has wealth equivalent to the bottom 50%, 160 million people, 3 individuals. That's grotesque wealth inequality. And then there is the spiritual decay, the increasing callousness toward vulnerable brothers and sisters, no matter what color, no matter what gender, no matter what sexual orientation, no matter what region. And I'm an internationalist, which is to say no matter what country in the world. Now,
So tell us how your candidacy will help to intervene in this decay.
absolutely. I'm getting a little melody from this chair here. That's cool, that's cool. No, Miles saying ain't the notes, it's the notes that follow that make the difference.
All right.
And the important thing is you have to have people who are highly visible, who are willing to tell the truth. You can't have a debate about policy and people not willing to tell the full truth, and the condition of truth is always what? To allow suffering to speak. And I come out of a biblical tradition. He or she is greatest among you will be your servant, focusing on the least of these, 25th chapter, Matthew. So that's why I've taught in prison for 41 years, because my brothers and sisters in mass incarceration, my brothers and sisters in the hoods, in the barrios, in the reservations, my brothers and sisters in the working classes who are wrestling with access to health care, decent housing, quality education. And so in that regard, for me, you have to first have persons who are willing to tell the truth. And we have a political class that specializes in running away from the truth.
So your candidacy as a way of intervening, you will be doing some truth telling. You're going to be doing some centering
from the vantage
on
point of poor and working people, ensuring that they and their children are just as important as the wealthy, as the well-to-do. So the truth telling goes hand in hand, though, brother, with the justice seeking. And justice is what love looks like in public.
Yes, yes. All right, I think we've got to start.
So you got a little sense. See, the thing is, you see, you got to have your vision in place before you get into your policy.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have your vision in place, you're going to be missing out on some folk who are usually poor, who are usually working class of all colors.
All right.
You see, absolutely.
We'll pick up another question, and thank you for that answer.
Thank you.
We have a video question that is in from Dr. Flo Coffer. She is actually going to be running herself for the mayor of Sacramento. Let's take a look at her question for you, Dr. West. Do we have it? We'll be looking right here.
Dr. West, thank you for being in Sacramento. My name is Dr. Flo Coffer, and my question is this. Across the nation, we are seeing a hot labor summer where workers are protesting and unions are striking or in the middle of negotiations to be able to get higher wages. I'm curious to know from your perspective, what are the things that we should be pushing for at the local, state, and national level to be able to address some of the challenges that are happening, especially as it relates to affordability and inflation?
Well, first, I salute you for your willingness to be part of the political process and pray for your candidacy right here in Sacto, right?
Yeah, she's
that's
running,
beautiful.
and her town hall will be here October the 12th, 6:00 p.m. So you have a chance to ask her, but we'll let you answer the question.
Well, she talked about the crucial role of unions in regard to workers gaining access, not just to benefits and wages, but dignity. Crucial. In the last 40 years, there's been a quadrupling of profits at the top, but wage stagnation, wages frozen. And so the wealth produced by those workers are primarily acquired by those at the top. That's why CEO salaries have exponentially increased. When I was growing up here in Sacramento and Glen Elder, we were just there, though, Glen Elder just today. When I was growing up in Glen Elder, top CEO had $30, but the workers had $1. Today, the top CEO has $425, and the worker has $1. That's called what the great Howard Thurman, and I did park in Howard Thurman space.
Yeah, you parked in Howard Thurman
I parked,
space?
oh, you know, I went straight to Howard Thurman, didn't I?
Okay. 1923 Morehouse College graduate. We'll just throw that out.
And he's a spiritual genius, an
Yes, he
intellectual
is.
giant.
Yes, he is.
And his book, Jesus and the Disinherited, 1949, which is the book that Martin Luther King Jr. carried with him all the time in his back pocket.
That's correct.
Taught by the great Benjamin Mays. He's his Morehouse man.
Yes,
you know,
yes,
y'all
he
know
is.
he's
Yes,
a
he
Morehouse
is. Yes,
man.
he is. Yes, he is.
Oh, you can tell a Morehouse man, but you can't tell him
Tell him
much. Oh, I love my brother. I love my brother. Howard Thurman called it a hound of hell. Greed. That's what you're talking about when you're talking about corporate elites gaining access to tremendous amounts of money. It's called greed. I got greed inside of me. I got to work with it every day. But I don't lie and act as if I'm free of the greed. I got hatred inside of me. I wrestle with it every day. I don't lie and act as if there's no hatred inside of me. So when it comes to trade unions, we have to be very clear in terms of not just support, but ensuring that they play a fundamental role in shaping the destiny of the working people of all colors. Now, it's always disproportionately ugly when it comes to black and brown and indigenous peoples. And sisters of all colors and women too, you see. So when we're talking about working people, we're not talking about just a homogeneous blob. They come in different colors, they come in different genders, they come in different sexual orientations. And look at our precious trans folk, viciously attacked, viciously assaulted. And you see, I'm a product of Shiloh Baptist Church on the chocolate side of Sacramento with Willie P. Cook and Deacon Hinton and Sarah Ray, my vacation Bible school teacher.
All right.
Yes, and they taught me what? They taught me that each and every one of us born in the image and likeness of God have exactly the same significance, exactly the same value. No matter who you are, who you think you are. And that means you viewing the world through a lens very different than the dominant lens of the world. That means that Jamal and Letitia in the hood have exactly the same value as the Rockefellers. And anybody else, no more or less. That's what it is to be a follower of that Palestinian Jew named Jesus, running the money changers out of the temple, making his way to the cross. Pontius Pilate, what you gonna do with this Palestinian Jew and so in love with poor people that he's willing to push the money changers out? Not because he hates the rich, he hates greed, and he loves poor folk. It's hard to be a follower of Jesus if you're on Pontius Pilate's payroll.
He's getting all over into my preaching lane here.
Oh, yes, man.
He's going to try to do the whole thing tonight. Let's take a question from the floor. We'll start with Dr. Danielle Hurd-Molell. Dr. Danielle, and then if you have questions, you want to start lining up at the microphone where Dr. Danielle is. Let's make sure we can hear you. Can you hear her in the house? Hold on, Dr. Danielle. All right.
All right.
There you go.
Oh, there we are.
Dr. West, it's an honor to have you here. I'm Dr. Danielle Hurd-Molell, and I'd like to ask you a question about how Democrats who have run for office, especially in the past decade or so, have often expected Black, brown, and working class people to vote for them as though we owe our vote to them without meaningfully addressing the issues that face us. So my question is, how can you speak to how Democrats have failed Black, brown, and working class folk over the past decade, and how does this relate to the poor voter turnout among these demographics? And maybe you can even tell us how many people aren't voting and how you may be able to tap into those that constituency.
You can always tell when a professor is speaking. See?
Oh, very important question. Very important question. No, indeed. It's roughly about 42% of our precious fellow citizens do not vote at all. 42%. They've given up. They think the system is rigged. They do not believe that their vote really counts. We have got to reach out and speak to them. And they are disproportionately chocolate in terms of percentage. And so when you look at both parties, we can begin the Democratic Party, right? Mm-hmm. Democratic Party makes strong claims. Most of the Black leadership are tied to the Democratic Party. And yet, 39% of Black children live in utter poverty in the richest nation in the history of the world. That's the key sweat moment. Something just ain't right. We look at the quality of schools in Black communities, quality of housing in Black communities, access to Medicare in Black communities. The assumption is that Black folk have nowhere else to go because the Republicans are worse on those issues. And every 2 or every 4 years, we see over and over again the argument, those folk over there are so bad that we know we may not be doing all that we would like to do, but we are willing to allow these conditions to continue. When you look at the mass incarceration regime, which to me is one of the crimes against humanity, it really is. When I began teaching in prisons, it was 250,000 prisoners. Now it's 2.2 million. Over 45% of them first went in, and of course you know from your own prophetic work, first went in with non-violent drug offenses. And the enforcement on the chocolate side of town very different than the enforcement on the vanilla side of town. My beloved wife, Professor Anahita Madavi West, who teaches precious brothers and sisters out of the prisons, sees it day in, day out. Now, for many politicians, they're not concerned because either they don't vote or the citizenry is not concerned. But when you come out of a tradition that produced me, when Martin Luther King Jr. and Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker and Diane Nash, and they would always say, Martin was right. The 4 issues: poverty, militarism, materialism, which is a spiritual issue, crucial, greediness, selfishness, and then last but not least, racism in any form. Not just Black folk, but indigenous peoples, not just indigenous peoples, but Asians. Not just Asians, but losing sight of the humanity of gay brothers and lesbian sisters or trans, or losing sight of the humanity of Jewish brothers and sisters, or Palestinian brothers and sisters, or Arabs, or Muslims across the board. Those are the 4 issues that will bring down the curtain on America. That's Martin. We just celebrated the 60th
March
anniversary of March on Washington.
Yes.
Right. That's Martin. Martin, no, he's not all by himself. You got Malcolm and a host of others too. But that's my tradition. I have got to be true to the love and courage and integrity poured into me by Irene B. West, Clifton West, Cynthia Cheryl West, my blood brother Clifton West, Willie P. Cook, my pastor, a Shiloh Baptist Church on 9th Avenue in Oak Park. That's who I am. And I'm a cracked vessel. I'm just trying to love my crooked neighbor with my crooked self.
All right, all right, all right.
I'm a cracked vessel like anybody else. But I'm going to be true to the tradition that has shaped me. And that's why when I made my announcement, I didn't say, I'm running for president. No, that for me is idolatry. I'm running for truth and justice. And the presidency happens to be a vehicle for that. When I'm not running for president, I'm still running for truth and justice.
All right.
After I win, I told my wife we're not even moving into the White House until everybody in America has a house.
Ooh, wow.
That's the kind of tradition I come out of.
All right,
Put
so
a smile on my mama's face.
come on.
Smile on Martin's face. Smile on Fannie Lou Hamer's face. Not because I'm so good. They set standards of moral and spiritual greatness that I'll never forget and I'll never give up on. I'm going to hold up that bloodstained banner until I die.
All right.
Why? Because that's the way I like to be in the world.
All right. Okay. So just dovetailing on that, and we see others that are in line, so this is great. Dovetailing on that, if we're locked into the mainstream media, including the so-called liberal media, we get a narrative of your entry into the race for the President of the United States on the Green Party ticket as an inevitable spoiler for President Biden. So how do you respond to this accusation and explain the value of third-party candidates?
Yeah, a big part of it is that first you have to recognize that 62% of fellow citizens in the past 2 elections who voted green would never have voted for Democrats. Never, ever.
Can you say that one more time?
62, nearly 2/3 of those persons who vote for Green Party would never, ever vote for a Democrat. That's why they voted green. They can't stand the Democrats. Now, I'm Christian, so I'm trying to love everybody. So it's not as if you can't stand them. I mean, there's some wonderful people who are Democrats. There's some wonderful folk who are Republicans. And I love everybody. With some divine aid. Called grace. Something bigger than me. But I'm serious. I'm committed to that. That's why people get upset when I call Trump a brother. On television, what you calling him a brother for? He's the devil. No, he's made in the image and likeness of God, and he has the capacity to change. He chooses to be a gangster. He chooses to be a gangster. I was a gangster before I met Jesus, and now I'm a redeemed sinner with gangster proclivities. So I'm on a human continuum with everybody in that sense. But the second thing is,
yes,
the Democratic Party assumes that they own people's votes. You got to earn it. If you're not speaking to the poor, you're not speaking to working people, if you're not trying to control the fossil fuel companies that are leading toward the planet itself going under, if you're not speaking to the issues, you don't get it. Look at the band playing that beautiful music. They playing Coltrane. Dignity of sound, unbelievable practice, unbelievable discipline. I could hear the hours of practice in you all playing Train. Because you know what high levels of artistic greatness actually is. Is that right, my brothers? Yes. You got Reggie, Train, McCoy, Spirit, right there. They know what the standards are. That's important. They didn't come in here just sounding any old way. And thinking that they deserve our response. They respected us enough to say, we're going to keep the standards high. So it is in politics. So it is in our lives.
let's go to the floor. We had a question at the mic. Tell us your name and your question, please.
Well, good evening. My name is Damon Randall, and I'm from Oakland.
Yes.
So, crack center of the Bay Area.
Your
I've
Lord.
survived the 60s through the heroin epidemic, the crack era, all of that.
Yes, yes.
I've also been in prison.
God bless you.
So my question is, to what lengths will you go to free a lot of the brothers that's in there that's unjustly accused with unjustified sentences and bring them back out here where I'm at so that they can live a real life?
We salute you, though, brother. We salute you, though, man. Your spirit is strong, 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 strong. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And your dignity is highly manifest. Highly manifest. See, my program, I begin with Martin ended, which is abolition. I'm an abolitionist when it comes to poverty. I'm an abolitionist when it comes to homelessness and unhousedness. So when the brothers do come out, I want to make sure they have access to jobs with a living wage. I want to make sure they have access to decent housing. I want to make sure they have access to health care. I want to make sure they have access to an education that allows them to soar like eagles. But I'd want to end mass incarceration. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. And I would use my pardon powers.
All right.
Oh, Mumi Abu-Jamal would go home. Oh, yes, he would. H. Rap Brown in Arizona would go home. Julian Assange would come home. Brother Snowden would come home. Why? I'm thoroughly convinced they are innocent. And the criminal justice system too often incarcerates innocent people. And I would have to listen to other cases as well. There's no doubt about that. But again, the important thing is the stress is on truth, justice, and mercy, looking at the world through the lens of, for Christians, the cross, but looking at the world as a human being through the lens of the least of these, of poor and working people. We've never, ever, at the highest level, had presidents who are committed to poor and working people in the way that I'm talking about. It's a new thing, but all it is just a spilling over of freedom struggles into electoral politics at the highest level of the country. That's what we're talking about.
Thank you, brother, for your question. Let's give him some love.
Appreciate it, brother.
Dr. West, you're blocking the live streamers from seeing you, and I know the lights are the lights are bright.
The lights are coming at me
Yeah,
so strong. I want me to look in the eyes of the brothers and sisters, but I've been blocking the live stream.
They want to see you.
Oh yeah, all right.
All right.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that.
We have another question. We have another question from a video guest who we'll check out right here. He's Joe Barr. He's a former journalist. He wants to ask you a question. Let's bring up Joe Barr.
Hi, Dr. West. My name is Joe Barr. I'm a former journalist in Sacramento, and now I work in the healthcare field. So my question for you is about healthcare. We know there are huge inequities in the healthcare system in the United States, and in fact, the U.S. ranks behind many other industrialized nations on major health metrics. So my question for you is, what is your plan to shore up the healthcare system in this country so it's more equitable and so that everybody can be healthy? And thank you for your answer.
Oh, well, thank you so very much. And again, I salute the work that you've been doing in regard to health care. I was blessed to spend some very high-quality moments with my dear brother Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders, in so many ways, is responsible for popularizing in a significant manner the struggle for health care for all.
So this way, Doc.
And yeah, health care for all. And I support that across the board. And what does that mean? It means that you take the big money out of your healthcare system so that your priorities are on satisfying people's needs rather than making profits as entrepreneurs concerned with healthcare. That's a major shift, but you have to ensure that the quality is high indeed.
but you also have to ensure that people have access to it. And unfortunately, even given all the reforms, we still got millions and millions, almost 21 million of our fellow citizens who have absolutely no health care at all because it's too often connected to employment. You see? And so that would be the starting point.
So this is an intersectional issue.
Absolutely, absolutely, very much so. And again, it's a matter of corporate greed. You see that these pharmaceutical companies, even regarding prescription drugs and so forth, when you're in it for the money, it's very hard to put people's needs at the highest level. It just is. That's one of the reasons why our armed forces are not market-driven. They are publicly supported, public health care, public space, because the country gives the highest priority to security. They don't want to leave it to markets. And I simply say that the precious poor and working people in the country have exactly the same status and significance to me in terms of national security as our armed forces. You have to broaden and deepen it. And of course, this is also true for our politicians. All of Congress, all of those folk get quality Medicare free. And yet when it comes to debating, they talk about how wonderful market-driven health care is. You say, ooh, that strikes me as too hypocritical here. What is going on? Well, let's just tell the truth. They don't put the same value on poor people's lives and working people's lives as they do on other lives. But that needs to be called into question. And people say, well, Brother West, it has a chance of a snowball in hell. You just dreaming. You were just having your aspirations. No. Visions and dreams begin with focusing on priorities that can become real if people are willing to organize, mobilize, and bring power and pressure to bear.
All right. Let's take another question from the floor.
Welcome, Dr. West. Thank you. My name is Carla Ruiz. And you mentioned earlier that you must have a vision first.
Yes.
What is your vision if you were to gain the presidency, and name one step that you would take to have the country come to that vision?
Yes. I appreciate that. No, I think I've been trying to suggest that my vision is one in which America as a nation can become reacquainted with the best of itself. America has a tradition of visionary and courageous persons, movements, and organizations that try to empower poor and working people. For me, Martin King and Fannie Lou Hamer are at the top, but there's a whole wave. Cesar Chavez, a whole wave of Americans. A lot of the names we don't even know, you see. But our young people especially, who are hungry for vision, need to be acquainted with these traditions, the Howard Thurmans and the Benjamin Mazes and the Toni Morrisons and others. So what is the vision? Human dignity at the center, the sanctity of human personality at the core, and the Negro National Anthem, which is lift every...
All right, voice and sing.
It's not lift every echo.
All right.
It's lift every voice. When everyday people, the language of Sly Stone,
All right.
lift voices, they shape their destiny. They don't choose poverty. They don't choose crime invested in neighborhoods. They don't choose low-quality schools. When you see those, you can rest assured that the voices of the folk in that community are not being raised. They've either given up, they've lost hope, or they've turned away. They've escaped because they've been overwhelmed by the circumstances. They're not lifting their voices. You can't be a jazz musician if you don't find your voice. Can't be an echo, an imitation, and a copy. no matter how great the ones are. So it is in a democracy. So the vision is human dignity, sanctity of human personality, and convincing people to straighten their backs up and lift their voices. Nobody is born by lifting their voice. When a baby comes out of the womb, that's noise. That's not a voice. They're not ripe yet. They got some work to do. They got to be educated and shaped in such a way that they move from noise to voice.
All right, good. Let's take one more from the floor, please.
Hi, Dr. West.
Hi.
Thank you for being
This is
here.
good to
My
see
name is Kathleen Tibbles. Discrimination of anyone is discrimination of all.
That's right.
And here we are in 2023, and as a woman, we still have 83% of what a man makes. For every dollar, a woman makes 83 cents. And it's been pretty stagnant over the last 20 years. I want to know, what would you do as president-elect to help eradicate any type of discrimination, whether it's sexual orientation or based on our gender, based on our color, or any other many discriminations that we have out in our country today? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a very important one because vicious legacies of male supremacy are just as evil as vicious legacies of white supremacy. Or any other kind of ideology that loses sight of the rich humanity of people. And one of the ways you attempt to hit those head on is to ensure that the people who are perpetuating them have substantive accountability. The only reason why it's 83% is somebody's getting away with it with no accountability. And there's various ways in which you bring power and pressure to bear to make people accountable. Now, of course, on the extreme end, you criminalize it. You become a criminal if you discriminate against these women, against these black folk, against these gay brothers and lesbian sisters. All of a sudden, a lot of folks say, well, I better think twice about that because I feel so good discriminating against, but I don't really want to go to jail. You don't say. Now, I don't go that far because I think there's ways in which we can have mechanisms of accountability to bring power and pressure to bear. I'm straight from Mississippi. I've been in Mississippi 3 days for the Emmett Till family. And the two young brothers, Brother Jenkins and Brother Parkins, who've been brutalized by the police. You all probably heard about the case. With the bullet going through the tongue and the neck, the goon squad down in Rankin County right outside of Jackson, Mississippi. And we were there with the family. Was that right, though, babe? Yeah, and Brother Noah, my dear Brother Noah. Yeah, I love this brother, his family. He was down there, too. And for the first time in the history of Mississippi, police make a guilty plea. And the question is now what the sentencing will be. What will the sentencing be? Will they be as hard on those vanilla brothers who choose to be gangsters as the court was the other day for Mark Riley Thomas in Los Angeles? No money, no dollar in the bank, 3.5 years prison. We're going to see. You see. But that's the kind of power and pressure you have to bring to bear when you have this kind of reality. And we don't have enough politicians who are willing to bring it to bear. Why? Because these days, most politicians are tied to big money and big donors and big benefactors with the lobbyists writing legislation for them. And poor people don't have lobbyists. Children don't have lobbyists. So you end up in the richest nation of the world, and almost 1 out of 2 of your children of color, if you include our precious indigenous brothers and sisters, and include our precious brown and black. You say, my God, how come there hasn't been a debate on child poverty? Marian Wright Edelman, one of the greatest prophetic figures emerging out of the 1960s movement, she's been talking about it for 50 years.
Children's Defense Fund.
Children's Defense Fund. You know about, you've been working on that, my brother. Very much so. Well, there's got to be somebody who lifts their voice and says, we are not ever going to forget the blood, sweat, and tears of those who told the truth and were seeking justice in the past and trying to pass it on to the next generation. And we rarely had presidential candidates, because usually by the time you become a presidential candidate, you've become so vetted and filtered that you hardly even mention the word poverty. You hardly even mention the word mass incarceration. You hardly ever mention the word hoods or barrios, because most of them don't vote. And you're only concerned about voters. What kind of a democracy is that?
All right,
All citizens ought to be subject to our concern.
Yeah.
In a serious way. I'm sorry to go on.
No. We know that you have these proclivities.
That's true. That's true.
He can answer the question in 12 parts, but we want to get as many questions as we can.
I appreciate that too.
You bet. We have another video question from Bishop Charlie Hames. We're going to bring up a video question and then we'll go to the audience. Let's bring up Bishop Charlie Hames.
Greetings, my fraternity brother, Dr. Cornel West. I'm Bishop Charlie Hames, Jr., Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. Here's my question. If elected president, how do you plan to create environmental sustainability in American society and economy while making a just transition for those workers who may be affected in the industries by these changes?
Yes, appreciate you. Salute your ministry too, though, my dear brother. One is that we have got to engage in a fundamental shift from extractive activities, taking from the earth. We need renewable and regenerative forms of energy. That the climate catastrophe is as real as a heart attack. And all you got to do is look in different places in the country and the world to see the effects of the obsession with extractive activity. And how do you do that? Well, the first thing you have to do is you're going to have to get some significant control over the fossil fuel companies that are in the driver's seat. And their argument is precisely what our dear brother said. Even though it's generating these climatic, disastrous effects and consequences, people want jobs. You say, oh, so you don't think we can come up with alternative jobs with a living wage that don't lead toward the sheer end of the planet as we know it? There are ways in which you generate jobs that are tied to renewable and regenerative energy. But it's very much a question of greed again. Corporate greed with little accountability at all. And that's why the ecological movement, that's why the environmental movement, that's why the Green Party, God bless my brothers and sisters in the Green Party, have been raising their voices year in and year out, decade in and decade out. But it takes tremendous backbone. I mean, I tell you, these fossil fuel companies, very much like these other lobbyists, boy, if you don't have backbone, and you never can do it by yourself. No one politician can do it. It's very much like a jazz band. You see, that it is a moment in a movement tied to something bigger than the moment of movement, which is the suffering of the people. That's got to be the fundamental motivation. And so even as you elect persons, you have to have people on the outside who are still organized, bringing power and pressure to bear against the lobbyists who are trying to contain and incorporate those who are elected. We've seen this a number of times in the last few years among different political parties. Democrats, you know, come in full of fire, talking about the working class. And after about 2 years, 4 years, things start getting real chilly. They start sounding like the establishment. Next thing you know, the very folk who are still suffering are lower and lower on their priority. Now on the street, people just say, they sold out. And there's some elements of truth to that. But there's more than that too. what also happened was they accustomed themselves to becoming so well adjusted to injustice.
Now, what is that you're doing with your
It
hand?
becomes a norm.
What's,
I think that's the Holy Ghost. Brother. I didn't even notice it. I didn't even notice it. I didn't even notice it. I didn't know my hand was moving like that. Yeah, exactly. Thank God somebody is me trying to work on the crack vessel like me.
I didn't know if that was an indicator. Let's take a question from the floor. Tell us your name and your question, please.
My name is Charles Wilson.
Brother Charles.
And I want to thank you, Dr. West, for coming to Sacramento tonight. I know you're born and raised in Oak Park, you say?
No, Glenelg. Well, I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but grew up in Glenelg. Yeah.
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
That's another subject by itself there.
Isn't that the truth? That's the
Black
gap
Wall
there.
Street right there. You know, you never recover from that one.
Charlie Wilson,
Never
brother.
recover from Black Wall Street. But I want to.
That's
But
true.
you mentioned a while ago earlier. You talked about global economics.
Yes.
And you know, you look at global economics, and you talked about, you used the word empire. And there's two empires in America, in the world I see today. That's this U.S. government and the Roman Empire. How will you expose the entrenchment of the U.S. government involved with Catholicism today around the world?
My dear brother Charles. And the book that you have, show everybody that book that's written in honor of the great James Melvin Washington, who was my greatest brother in the history of the world, closest to me other than my blood brother. I don't know how he got that book, but I couldn't believe Brother Charles had that book. Oh, you got it from the... Lord, God bless you, man.
Okay. Oh, this is your book. I'm like, how could you tell? I know it, but it's written by him.
No, I didn't write it. I just edited it.
I was like, how does he recognize this book? The cover. I know you're well read, but man. I'm like,
No, we had
somebody
talked
bring
before.
me my glasses.
We had talked
Okay,
before.
very good.
My dear brother
All
Charles,
right.
because I got a chance to sign it.
Okay, very
but
good.
I mentioned it because James Melvin Washington is one of those clouds of witnesses who edited a testament of hope of Martin Luther King Jr.
Got it.
And his voice and his witness is so very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
But keep in mind, now he mentioned the Roman Empire, right? That's the empire that crucified Jesus. Let's just be very clear about that. The fall of nearly every empire takes the form of military overreach. It takes the form of corruption of those who are ruling. It takes the form of citizens who feel hopeless and helpless. And it takes the form of scapegoating the most vulnerable rather than confronting the most powerful. Now, the United States empire has all of those features, each and every one of them. And we are witnessing the decay and the decline of the empire. And any decay and decline is manifest usually in hounds of hell. More hatred, more polarization, more gangsterization, more greed, more lack of accountability, and more fear. People are scared. People are intimidated, disrespecting each other, despairing, full of paranoia. And of course, we admit America's deeply shaped by a gun culture. So you put all of that together, and here we are in 2023. Here comes Brother Trump, look like he's leading the country toward a second civil war. And then here comes Brother Biden, who could be leading the country toward a third world war. W.B. Du Bois, one of the greatest of all scholars in the history of this nation. He said, I foresee a third world war in which America will attempt to suppress Asia and stranglehold Russia. And we look around and what do we see? More and more the confrontation of Russia and NATO. United States being a member of NATO, if any member of NATO was attacked, that's like attacking the United States, which means possible nuclear exchange. And the same is true with China, more and more over Taiwan. Now, given those kind of realities, the question becomes, then how do we make the empire more decent and democratic? Catholicism and its legacy is like any other religious tradition. You've got prophetic Catholics that agree very much with so much of what I have to say. You've got deeply, what would be the right word? What would be the right? You got deeply right-wing Catholics who want to go back, because that's what it is to be a right-wing. You think that all the greatness is in the past. You want to go back. I don't mind going back to pick out the great ones. But when I go back to Mississippi and pick out Fannie Lou Hamer, I'm not picking out Mississippi Jim Crow, Jane Crow, lynching, and American terrorism. It's the struggle against American terrorism, struggle against the Jim Crow and Jane Crow. You see, so you got so the Catholics themselves have splits. Then you got the vast majority of Catholic brothers and sisters right in the middle. They lukewarm. They lukewarm. They don't know. That's true for my hang loose Baptist. I'm a hang loose black Baptist. Right? Same is true. Black Baptists, where are the black Baptists in terms of prison ministry? Most black Baptist churches got building funds much bigger than prison ministry. I thought that the Bible said you put a priority on prison ministry. No, it's really the building fund in my car and my CEO status. Ooh. All of a sudden now that thick blood at the cross becomes Kool-Aid. People just dipping in to get what they want because they're only concerned about commodities and possessions rather than having their souls turned upside down in order to be followers of Jesus. They no longer believe that if the kingdom of God is within them, then everywhere they go, they ought to leave a little heaven behind.
All right, all right.
What kind of heaven behind are you leaving if you're not fighting for poor and working people?
All right. Going to preaching again. We got to invite you on a Sunday, too, just to come on and just have him come and go ahead and preach.
I'm not worthy to be in any of these churches, though, but I can tell my story. I got a testimony. I'll tell you that. No doubt about that.
All right, let's look at, we've seen the attack on affirmative action recently with the Supreme Court, the reversal of Roe versus Wade. We're at a time where we've got to look at the Supreme Court very carefully and critically. Some Democrats have advocated for expansion of the Supreme Court in wake of its rightward tilt. Do you believe this is necessary, the expansion of the Supreme Court?
I think it's a wonderful idea.
Is that your entire answer?
That's it, absolutely.
Okay.
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
All right, very good. From the floor, let's go to Eric. Reverend Eric. Is that Eric?
That's me.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what a wonderful. When we came in, we first met this brother. He was the public face of your institution.
Yes, yeah.
And this institution is in good hands with this brother. These 7 years he's been.
This is my senior associate minister, Reverend Eric over
Yes,
Donaldson.
in very good hands this place is.
You have no idea.
Dr. West, thank you so much for being here this evening. I'm the son of Ruby and Etheridge Donaldson. Etheridge Donaldson was an elementary school teacher for over 30 years, and Ruby Donaldson was a Detroit public school social worker for 25 years. You are an academician. You have probably seen some of the best practices of education and maybe some of the worst practices as well. In light of some of the culture wars that we are beginning to see in our nation around CRT, around affirmative action, and around banning of books, can you talk to us about your vision for education?
Yeah, first I want to salute your parents, though, brother. Very, very much so. They did a good job on you, too. They did a wonderful job on you, man. Oh, yes, they did. Indeed, indeed. No, I think that first we have to draw a distinction between education and schooling. You see, schooling is about skills and information. Education is about critical thinking and transformation. You see. And there's not enough education in the educational system. Then we had to move toward a sign of maturity. And one of the highest signs of maturity is humility. To come in and say, no one theory has a monopoly on truth. No one school of thought has a monopoly on truth. That's why I can learn from a Buddhist like Bell Hooks. I can learn from an agnostic like James Baldwin. I can learn from a Muslim like Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X. I can learn from any color, any culture, any gender, because I'm humble enough in my efforts to learn how to listen like jazz musicians. Find your voice by listening to other voices. So we got to have schools that proceed based on a humility. No theory is kind to us that cheats us of seeing. That's what the great Henry James said to Robert Louis Stevenson. No theory is kind to us that cheats us of seeing. And what that means is, back to the Negro National Anthem. Lift all the voices. Let's see what the arguments are. Let's see what schools of thought you have. Let's see what evidence you have. Let's have a Socratic dialogue. By Socratic, what do we mean? Self-critical, self-scrutinizing, self-interrogating in such a way that we realize even when we end, we still are in process because we never reach truth, capital T. We are fallen human beings. We're finite. But we can reach better perspectives, better interpretations. And that, in the end, is education at its best. But we are in a moment now where the educational system has been so dumbed down from folk who are fearful of any kind of truth and think they can go on based on the efficacy of lies. No lie can live forever. Truth, crushed the earth, will rise again. Sooner or later, you're going to reap what you sow. That's my tradition. But it's said in such a way that it doesn't mean that I have a monopoly on truth. I could be wrong on a whole host of things. I want to learn. That's what discussion, dialogue, critical engagement is all about. I think one of the wonderful things about this sacred space, when you all talk about unity, a positive path to spirituality, it's almost as if you're saying, all of us are human and finite and cracked vessels, and let's try to come together in such a way that we can muster the courage to love. And what is love? Love is a form of death. You got to be willing to die in order to live. What is death in process? It is killing the fear and the hatred and the greed inside of us so we emerge as better, more compassionate, visionary, embracing human beings. That's what learning how to die in order to live is all about. That's what Paul says in New Testament. Christians must what? Die
daily.
What was the eulogy from Martin Luther King Jr., Dorothy Day, a Catholic sister? Martin Luther King Jr. learned how to die daily. What happens when you fall in love? You learn how to die. All of that narcissism and hedonism and selfishness, some of it all to die, so you become entangled with another human being, and all of a sudden you feeling so different you don't know yourself from anybody, from your past. Got a big smile on your face. Hertel, is that what happened when you met Cynthia? Exactly. Exactly. It's a process. And the same is true, of course, when you fundamentally undergo that transformation at the cross. Something died in you in order for something better to emerge. You see, that's what education is, too, because it's a love of wisdom, a love of beauty, it's a love of holy, love of goodness, love of justice. As long as you have that love at the center of it, then you know certain kind of processes are taking place that will be both, what Frankie Beverly says, joyful and painful at the same time. You can't have one without the other. Can't have one without the other.
I really want to just pause and just acknowledge you for bringing that word into the national discourse, love. I think we are far too polarized. I think we're far too fear-driven. I think that the national discourse has come to the place where the way we engage with our ideas, we don't have competitors, we have sworn enemies, which means that after the elections are over, we have influenced a citizenry, or the citizens of our nation, not to be able to live harmoniously with each other. And so what I am hearing in this piece that I want, a big part of why I'm involved in this type of, at the intersection of religion and public life, because I do think that a part of our role in the faith communities is to find ways to operationalize love as a political force, as a force for changing the world in which we live. So I have to give you that.
No, but that's what you do, brother.
I have to give you that.
That's what you do. And again, for me, see, I come from a great black people.
Mm-hmm.
For 400 years, just chronically hated, enslaved, lynched, violated, raped. Not just in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what has been the primary response? Not everybody, but black leadership. Frederick Douglass, what are you going to do in the face of hatred? I'm gonna love everybody. What are you going to do in the face of terror? I want freedom for everybody. What are you going to do in the face of trauma? I choose to be a wounded healer rather than a wounded herder. The blues in Delta, Mississippi. What are you going to do, Son House? What you going to do, B.B. King? What Emmett Till's mother say at the funeral when her baby was there in Chicago? His head was 3 times the size of his ordinary head. You know Chicago. She said, I don't have a minute to hate. I will pursue justice for the rest of my life. That's a spiritual and a moral achievement that is gargantuan. She didn't call for a black version of the Ku Klux Klan. She could have.
Mm-hmm.
Black folk could have done that long time ago. You've been terrorizing us all these years. We're going to start terrorizing you in exactly the same way, whether you're guilty or innocent, because you've been killing our innocent. No, don't do it, Jamal. Don't do it, Letitia. How come? Because it's not morally and spiritually great. Don't be in the gutter with the gangster. Be a person. Be decent. Be human. Be loving. Be compassionate. It's true. That's Martin King's love. That's James Baldwin's Love So Cassie. That's John Coltrane's Love Supreme. That's Stevie Wonder's Love in Need of Love. That's the Love Train of the OJs. That's the Caravan of Love of the Isley Brothers. And we ain't got to Curtis Mayfield yet. Hey, we ain't got to Aretha yet. Hey, what is it about these black people? In the face of all of this hatred, they choose the love train. Not a song, but a way of being in the world. And it's not a function of their skin pigmentation. It's a choice that they make, because they know there's black gangsters, there's black thugs who choose hatred too. But they have not been the dominant ones in the history of the movement of black people. And that's very important. That's spiritual.
Yeah.
That's what you all understand at Unity.
Yeah.
And we understand it at Shiloh too.
Wow. We're just about out of time. We have another question, a video question from our sister, and I'll take her question after, okay? We have another video question from our sister Rev. Derica Blackman from Oakland, the East Bay Church of Religious Science. Let's hear from Sister Derica Blackman.
Dr. West, so good to see you building with my brother, Rev Kev, and my family there at Unity of Sacramento. For decades, your prophetic vision has inspired me, my community here in Oakland, and our folks throughout the world. My question to you is, how do we center our spirituality in political movements? Can you give us a word of hope in these times of discord and conflict? How do we keep not just our heads up, but our spirits up in these turbulent times?
Oh, thank you so much, my dear sister. That's profound. Let me just say this. This has been a magnificent time together. The quality of question. It really has been. It really has been. And this is really the first town hall that I've had. I haven't had a fundraiser. I haven't done anything publicly. When I went to Mississippi, I went to serve folk in Mississippi the best way I could. I didn't go in with no presidential campaign and all that. No, I don't proceed like that. I don't roll like that, you see. So this has just been magnificent. But I think two things are very important. One is we must always be spiritually unapologetic. You see. That's very important. Because you see, in a highly commodified world that's obsessed with science and money and status and position and spectacle and image, when you come in spiritually, people think, oh, you one of them, huh? Yeah, you in all that love stuff. Oh, please get out of the way. You say, no, You come in with your cold train, and you can bring little Carole King, anybody else you want. You could have some James Cleveland if you want.
Come on.
But you say, I am spiritually unapologetic because I'm true to the testimony that has been poured into me by those who love me, and that's what has sustained me, and I am in no way apologetic about it. That's the first thing. And second thing is that always remember, any justice that's only justice soon degenerates into something less than justice. See, you got people talking about justice all the time. But if the justice is not tied into something deeper, something spiritual, do you really, really, really care? Like Marvin Gaye in his album, What's Going On? Who really cares? Doesn't just talk about justice, because justice can become a career move. I'm talking about your heart. I'm talking about your soul. I'm talking about your deeds. I'm talking about your action. I'm talking about your praxis. The only thing that sustains justice is love. And last but not least, let us be very honest about this, that fear is a major impediment. People just scared. They're scared about their careers. They're worried about their status. What breaks the back of fear? Love.
Wow. Let's get our last question here. Come on up. Tell us your name.
Oh, hi. My name is Anna Ramirez, and it's a pleasure to speak with you, Dr. West. And I want to thank Reverend Ross and Anita for making this happen. So this is so great. Okay. I'm going to try not to sound frustrated here, but I think in terms of the people of color, first of all, they're not engaged. They're not engaged because I think they have an inner knowing that this type of government is not working for them anymore, right? The corporatists have taken over, right? So we have this duopoly, right? And I think they know that it doesn't represent them. It represents a corporate world, and like you were saying, Dr. West, greed and all that in Wall Street, right? So, and I think they know that. But my thing is here, and of course, the Democratic Party has also impinged on our First Amendment rights. And so they're little by little, you know, that's kind of scary too. So I think transformation in the past that I remember, or, you know, obviously during the 60s, during Martin Luther King, had to do with movement, right? And it had to do, like you said, with mobilization, right? That's one of the things that have been also stymied with this government. They're not allowing a protest, they're not allowing all this other stuff to speak our word, right?
Put it in a question for me, though.
Well, the question is, what way do you see, what mechanism can you see in terms of mobilization again, in terms of getting our youth involved, right, and connected to what's going on, you know? And also folks that are not voting anymore because of how they're feeling, that are not represented. So what other way can you think about that can mobilize folks again? That's my question.
No, appreciate that query, that question. it connects in some ways with our dear sister from Oakland, both of the sisters' questions. One is that people would rather see sermons than hear them. It's examples that make the difference, especially for young people. That's why you have to go to them and not just talk to them, but be with them. And the examples can become contagious enough for them to decide, lo and behold, I can go another way. I don't have to go this dominant way of the world. That I actually can be in the world but not of it. I actually see people who are changing people, and by changing them, I see that they're the kind of people I like to be with or want to be like. So as long as we have more examples, spiritual examples, moral examples, great artistic examples, not just tied to narrow success, but moral and spiritual greatness.
We're going to, first of all, let's give all of you and all of our participants a great round of applause. Thank you so much. Dr. West, we want to give you the final word, and if that's the final word, that can be it, but we're going to give you the final word. We're going to have a piece of music, and I'm going to ask those of you who are here, if you support what we're doing here, to make a gift to Unity of Sacramento. We want to continue to do this work, and we are a church that is seeking to move at the intersection of love and justice. And so we're asking for your support. So while the music is playing, if you decide you want to support Unity of Sacramento, we would greatly appreciate that. There'll be QR codes and all of that, but help us to do, look at God. Look at God.
And you know that's just symbolic.
All right.
That's just symbolic.
We know. Yeah, it is.
That's right.
I'm going to give it back to you, and I'm going to let you give it to the ushers so that there's order. There's an orderly way. But I appreciate that. Okay. We're going to give you the last word, Dr. West, and then we'll have a little music, and we'll receive an offering, and we will hopefully get a chance for some of you to interact with us.
I just want to say thank you, and I think the musicians should always have the last word. So let's end with the musicians and the singers and the artists. Indeed.
Thank you so much, dear brother. Appreciate you.
All you need is faith to hear the diesel. Join hands, start a love train, love train. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. One love, one heart. Give thanks and praise to the Lord, and we will feel alright. Give thanks and praise to the Lord, and we will feel alright. Give thanks and praise to the Lord, and we will feel alright.
I'm going to ask, give them this. These are our Voices of Unity singers today. They're a segment of the choir here on Sundays, and they just give their hearts to everything. Thank you so much. Representing tonight, we ask that you would prepare your gifts, however you've come prepared to give. We just want to take a moment and bless that gift. You can use the QR code if you want to give, and then we're going to close our service, our event tonight. Have you enjoyed yourselves? Was it fun? And we're bringing other candidates, and you'll be helping us bring other candidates. Dr. Marianne Williamson is coming. Dr. Flo will be here. She's coming. Dr. Flo comes October the 12th at 6 p.m., and so she'll be coming. And we've invited a lot of candidates. These are the ones, and Dr. West confirmed first. Look at God. He's also going to be at the Guild bookstore. Is that tomorrow? Is that Friday? Tomorrow, what time? You know, Guild Theater tomorrow at 7 o'clock. They're having poetry and so forth, so if you want to go over there as well, please do. Let's take a moment to give thanks. Loving presence, we give thanks for the gifts, the givers, the spirit of generosity that is flowing through this community tonight, for the insights that we've gained from the rich dialogue that we've had, and for the possibility that we can be for the world. We send these gifts forth in that spirit of love. Amen and amen. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your presence. Being here, come on back on a Sunday, 10:30 a.m. You're welcome to be with us at any time on Sundays. And we turn it up a little bit. We turn it up. Is that right, Caden? I see you out there now. From UC Davis. Give him some love. Now I know you know what the address is. Let's call you back home. As we leave here, I just want to extend this benediction. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Go forth and be a force for good in the world. Thanks for coming out tonight. God bless. God bless.